sitting here with my colleague Jeff, who I think has got a quick question.
Sure.
Yeah, hi Marie.
Hello.
I'll just remind our viewers that you're watching on OneCliimate.net, and you can post your questions or comments throughout this conference to OneCliimate.net, or if you're watching anywhere else on the web in the many places where our feed is embedded, and you're on Twitter, just use the hashtag OneCliimate and we'll pick that up. We have a question in from one of our viewers, and Ken asked, how do these laws balance human rights against nature rights if they conflict? For example, the need for food. So I think that's sort of what we were just getting at, and I recognize that maybe at this conference that's not really the level of discussion, but I think many of our viewers still will want to know, what is the bottom line here, and how can this really, what does this mean practically speaking in our everyday lives, where in places where these laws are enacted?
Right. There has been some discussion here of just that, and it's a question of balancing of rights, like your rights and my rights. We both possess civil rights under our structures of law, and we have to always, we're trying to strike a balance between you don't interfere with my rights and I don't interfere with yours. It's really no different, I think, when it comes to nature. And here in the conference, we've been discussing that, and I think it's so much of the discussion has been about outside forces, particularly that come from capitalist systems, multinational corporations coming in and doing, activities like oil drilling, for example, like in Ecuador, or mining in other places that have caused great destruction and harm to ecosystems, whether they be in Amazonia or in other places, which clearly has been very destructive for the peoples, the communities, and the ecosystems where these corporations come in. And so I think a lot of the discussion here is focused on the need to be able to prevent that kind of thing from happening, and recognizing the rights of Mother Earth, the rights of ecosystems, gives people the power, that is, to defend the rights of those ecosystems, which they do not have right now. And so that's, I think, where this is headed. Communities in the United States, so and a number of them now have that ability. And I think that's, and in Ecuador as well, and I think that's providing a really important precedent for the conversation that's been happening here in the working group on the rights of Mother Earth, and for what will happen when the draft declaration for the rights of Mother Earth is presented to the General Assembly.
Issues we've been talking a lot about with our guests today, which is how do you see this moving forward after the conference? I know that we watched Morales earlier saying that he wants the conclusions to be taken seriously and fed into the UN process. Is that kind of the main outcome that you see?
I think there's several outcomes. There's that. Indeed. We've been working all night, and including all of the comments. It's been a really very vigorous conversation that has occurred in the working group. We've had several days now, hours and hours long, in which people from all around the world giving their declaration and giving their own experiences about what is important to them, what needs to be included in it. It's been an incredibly diverse and important conversation. From here, my understanding is that declaration that's going to come out of the conference, that Morales, Ambassador Salon to the UN from Bolivia, will be taking that. I think they're going to be taking it actually to Mexico for the next climate change conference, as well as to the General Assembly. Second to that, though, I think it's been a very important moment here in Bolivia with respect to this idea of rights of Mother Earth, which is a really new idea for many people, though not for indigenous peoples, because they think of it as an inherent right, inherent to their collectibles and their communities. But it's a new idea for, I think, a lot of the developed world, especially. And I think this conference provides a very important window of opportunity for discussing this. And the draft declaration, I think, will become a very important tool or an instrument for people to really get their minds around this concept and begin to talk about how do we bring this into our own communities, how do we bring this into our own countries. Some of the work that we do, and we talked about it on a panel here at the conference earlier today, is working with local governments, both in the United States and in other countries, as well as at the national level in countries, to help them to be able to figure out how do they possibly include this in their own structures of law. And I think this conference has been so important for people to begin to have that kind of a conversation and think about when they leave here, bringing it home and seeing how they might be able to implement it.
And you've mentioned a couple of times the panels that you're working on, just for the benefit of our viewers around the world and for us stranded here by the volcano.
Yeah.
How is the process proceeding in the conference and in these panels in particular? What's the process? We know it's a people summit and there's been a huge emphasis placed on that. So could you just outline that a little?
Of course. There's 17 working groups. A number of them are focused on climate change and different aspects of climate change. And I think a lot of that is when heading into the conference in Mexico. I can only speak to our working group because I've spent all of my time in that room. We've had, I think, probably 300 plus people who participated in this conversation. And what that means is that we met all day on Monday from 8:30 in the morning till about 6:30 in the evening. We met for another 4 hours, I think, yesterday on Tuesday and again on Wednesday. And what it's involved is that we all have this draft declaration. It's for about 4 or 5 pages. And before the conference, people were able to provide comments by email on the document. There was a pre-conference in March here in Bolivia that produced a draft document, and the comments that have been coming in from around the world, the written comments, have been incorporated. And it's during the course of the working group meetings over the last several days that people have been able to get up to the microphone amidst this very large crowd and give their ideas overall about their draft declaration of rights of Mother Earth, as well as very specific ideas focusing on things like identifying those who are responsible for violating the rights of Mother Earth and other kinds of concepts. And a group of us have been working on incorporating these comments. And later today, on Wednesday, all of the groups, all 17 of them, are going to be sort of giving a report to a large body on what the outcome of their working group was. And I think all of the working groups work very similarly. That is, that they worked on producing some kind of document that they can bring either to the climate change conference or to the UN, or different kinds of bodies like that. And so that's my understanding of how the other ones have been working as well. And it's been really, as I said, it's been a very vigorous conversation, and you have people coming from very different places. But what I think is really, really important is that conversation, no matter where people came from, no matter what their background is, no matter if they're with indigenous communities or not, there has been an overwhelming expression of the need for recognizing the rights of Mother Earth, both within ourselves, within our, in our hearts and our minds, but also within law, and the need for communities and regional and national governments, as well as the United Nations, to begin implementing this, because there's such a, we're surrounded here by people who understand that our ecosystems, our environment is in crisis, and that we need to begin doing something fundamentally different if we're going to, as a natural community, as Mother Earth, if we're going to survive.